What's up, y'all? Back once again. Iskosi Umfundisi. This one's gonna stick to the topic of Africa, Oceania. Africa's in the Pacific Ocean, Black Pacific, which is part of my playlist and whatnot. And we're gonna talk about something that's not really discussed, and it's passed down to me by somebody, a friend of mine on the internet. And I had to do a video about this because it was just wow. It blew my mind. The Filipino genocide. 3 million Filipinos killed. You know what I'm saying? And it's not really discussed much because, as you see, and I'm going to blow up the picture here, the dude in the picture is like, a kind of a blackish guy. Get up here getting tortured, you know what I'm saying, with the stranglers around his neck, But it's not really talked about this genocide right here, And I wanted to go a little bit more in depth about that. You know what I'm saying? I want to go a little bit more depth about the genocide and whatnot, The Philippine genocide, 3 million Filipinos killed. The Philippine genocide is a genocide history forgot. You will find in the history books that the very Filipino-American War of 1899 and 1902, but they fail to mention the genocide carried out by the United States of America on the people of the Philippines. I first came across a reference to the Philippine genocide in 2009, and since then has spent a lot of time researching it. I discussed it with many people, and it seems the people of the Philippines are not taught about the genocide, and very few even heard of the Philippine genocide. The fact that it's not taught and so few know about it made me question if it really happened. So I dug much deeper and have come to the conclusion it did happen. But as the victors write the history books, they try to cover it up because it was so horrific. Here's another picture of the skull and bones where they got people messed up, where they're just doing mass graves. This is the U.S. military. What brought me to this conclusion that the Philippines genocide did happen is the figures in the history books simply do not add up. The history book that was written by the victors claimed that somewhere between 200,000 and to 300,000 died in that period. What is still a large number, considering the population of the Philippines at the time was no more than 9 million. 200,000 to 300,000 dead just cannot be correct. A People's History of the United States, 1980, cites 300 Filipinos killed in the barracas alone. That alone proves the figures wrong. Williams Pompey, American Neocolonialism in 1970, cites 600,000 Filipinos dead in Luzon alone by 1902. This is backed up by General Bear himself, who said, "We estimate we killed 1/6 of the population of the main island of Luzon, some 600,000 people." E. Amand wrote, "The Theory and the Fallacies of Counterintelligence, The Nation, August 2nd, 1971, the bloodiest colonial war in proportion to population ever fought by white power in Asia. It cost the lives of 3 million Filipinos." Filipino historian Lumava Francisco carried out a thorough investigation of the Philippine genocide and documented. She arrived at the figure of 1.4 million Filipinos dead. The End of an Illusion, London, 1973. However, this is only covered of a period of 1899 to 1905. It does not cover the first 2 decades of U.S. colonial rule, a time when the killing might have been slow, but was still happening to keep the people in order. It also does not include thousands of Filipino Muslims, Moros, that was killed brutally. Now, we don't get into these Filipino Muslims, because many people don't know that the Moros were Moors, the same Moors from Spain. Same type of stuff. People often ask why do not the census figures do not show a drop in population for that period. There could be very few reasons for this. Firstly, I doubt even today the population figures for the Philippines are correct, as so many people live off the radar. Imagine how difficult it would have been to calculate the proportions in the late 1890s and the early 1900s. The methodologies used by the Spanish and Americans were also very different. The Spanish left the Irrigots, Ertas, the Lumas, and the Moro peoples alone, so it was unlikely they were included in the census. You also have to ask if the U.S. census figures show a drop of 1.4 million or more, would they publish this for the world to see? I suspect, however, that the U.S. figures are no more than a guess based on Spanish figures, as it would at the time of war would have been almost impossible to collect the numbers. Or maybe the U.S. did get the task of collecting the numbers, but rather than going out into hostile communities that would put them in danger, they made them use the Spanish sentence as the guide. The slaughter. In an article published in Philadelphia Ledger, November 1901, their Millennium correspondent wrote, The present war is no bloodless opera buffet engagement. Our men have been relentless, have killed to exterminate men, women, and children, prisoners and captive, active insurgents, and suspect peoples from lads up from 10 and up. The idea prevailing that the Filipino is such little better than a dog. Our soldiers have pumped salt water into men to make them talk and have taken prisoners of people who held their hands up peacefully surrendered. And an hour later, without an atom of evidence to show that they were even insurgents, stood them on a bridge and shot them down one by one to drop them in the water below and float down, as examples of those who found their bullet-loaded corpses. Major Littleton Waller, a U.S. Marine that was accused of shooting 11 unarmed Filipinos in Samar, another Marine's officer described his testimony. The major said that General Smith instructed him to kill and burn, and said the more he killed and burned, the pleased he would be. That was a time to take no prisoners, and that he was to make the Samar a howling wilderness. Major Waller asked General Smith to define the age limit for the killing, and replied, everyone over 10. So they was on there knocking heads off. No, the Filipinos did not stand a chance against the superior, overwhelming firepower of the American troops. In the first battle, Admiral Dewey was firing 500-pound shells as he steamed along the river Paxton. The bodies of the dead Filipino were so high that U.S. troops used them for a defensive wall. Writer Mark Twain, best known for his books The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, wrote, I have seen that we do not intend to free, but to subjugate the peoples of the Philippines. We are going to conquer, not to redeem. And I am so anti-imperialist. I am opposed to having an American eagle put his talons on any other land. On the 5th of October, 1900, Mark Twain wrote the New York Times, we have pacified some thousands of islanders and buried them, destroyed their fields, burned their village, turned their widows and orphans outdoors, furnished heartbreak by exile to some dozens of disagreeable patriots, subjugated remaining 10 million by benevolent assimilation. Wow. Which is the pious new name of the musket. We have required property in the 300 concubines and other slaves of our business partner, the Sultan of Sulu, and hoisted our protecting flag over that swag. And so, by these providence of God and the phrases of the government, not mine, we are a world power. Mark Twain. Now, according to Mark Twain, this is just a side note, he's saying that the United States is picking up slaves. The United States Army, which is nothing new for them, was taking slaves to the Sultan of Sulu. You know what I'm saying? And using them as concubines for their business partner. Mark Twain also spoke on the almost universal racism of the white American troops and politicians. He called them shameless. He was deeply disturbed by the sadistic war crimes that was committed by the American troops. He suggests that the stars and stripes of the American flag should be replaced with a skull and crossbones. Was it American policy to kill as many Filipinos as possible? Brigadier General J. Franklin Bell wrote, with a very few exceptions, practically the entire population has been hostile to us at the heart. So there was no doubt the Americans saw every Filipino as an enemy. The United States carried out a scorched-to-earth campaign in burning and destroying villages. They also turned villages into concentration camps, where they burned the land around them and built watchtowers and looked over free fire zones. Anyone trying to leave the village was shot. They called these concentrates carnizados. Now, on a side note, too, this is during the Spanish-American War. They also had them in Cuba, these concentration camps, and they also had them in Puerto Rico. The Reconsados, or concentration camps, were full of disease, which caused high death rate. The death rate in some camps was as high as 20%. One camp was 20 miles long by 1 mile wide, and a prison for 8,000 Filipinos. The man was often rounded up to be tortured, questioned using tortures. If they gave the Americans the information they wanted or not, did not matter, as they were still shot. A soldier from New York wrote, the town of Ticino was surrendered to us a few days ago, and 2 companies occupied the same. Last night, one of our boys was found shot and his stomach cut open. Immediate orders were received from General Wheaton to burn the town and kill every native in sight, which was done to a finish. About 1,000 men, women, and children were reportedly killed. I am probably growing hard-hearted, for I am in my glory when I can sight my gun on some dark skin and pull a trigger. So that dark skin was a key. They was darker than, let's see what they look like though. Corporal Sam Gills wrote, We make everybody get into his house by 7 p.m. And we can only tell a man once. If he refuses, we shoot him. We killed over 300 natives the first night. They tried to set the town on fire. If they fired a shot from the house, we burn a house down and every house near it. And shoot the natives so they're now pretty quiet in the town now. As you see right here, they got people lined up ready to gun them down. This is in the paper around this time, about 100 years back, a little bit over 100 years back. And they got kids. These are boys. These are young children they killing in front of a fire squad. A British eyewitness in the Philippines said, "This is not war. It's simply a massacre and murderous butchery." Why the Philippine genocide happened? It happened because of a prayer to God. President McKinley was in the White House praying when he claimed it came to that he could not give the Philippines back to Spain as that would look cowardly. McKinley said he did not want the Philippines, but then one night in the White House, while he was on his knees praying to God, it came to him that we could not give them back to Spain. It would be cowardly. He could not let France and Germany have the Philippines as it would be bad for business. He could not let the Philippines rule themselves as he considered them incapable. So he decided Americans should take the whole Philippines rather than just Manila, which is all they had at the time. Educate the people and Christianize them, something the Spanish had already done to many other people. So in 1899, the USA declared war on Philippines as a way to educate, Christianize, and civilize the people, and the Philippines genocide began. Got them up in ditches. They got them up in ditches, knocking them off. We'll get more to this though. Conclusion. While I cannot be sure of the figure of some 3 million people, that 3 million that some historians claim, we can be pretty sure from the research that the figures of 1.4 million killed in the Philippine genocide between 1899 to 1905 is correct. It is unlikely the killings just suddenly stopped. The reports from the time show how racist towards the Filipinos many American troops have become. They also show that many of the troops have become to enjoy the killing. Could you get men that have become brutal killers to suddenly stop killing? It is very unlikely. You only have to look at the wars today that are nowhere near as brutal in an age where people were more educated to realize how war affects some people. We also know the fighting with the Moros carry on. So what did the numbers each reach 3 billion? We will never know it, but it probably did between 1899 to 1942 when the Japanese arrived. So they really can't say what the numbers going to look at, but we're going to look more into the Moro people. This picture right here is a very, beckoning picture of the era we're going to show. And this is from the Boston Sunday Globe, expansion before expansion. As you really look and see, they got them, first they chasing each other right here. Then they going to play baseball. This on your left-hand corner. They said when we bring the civilization here, we're going to be chasing baseballs. You know what I'm saying? Then they show them just chilling, pushing a cart horse and stuff like that. And they'll be like, well, they're going to be working for us as the lower left-hand corner. Then in the middle, it shows a black man, a black native. You know what I'm saying? And it says before expansion. Then they show them all kind of G'd up with gold teeth in his mouth and all type of stuff like that. The Filipino after expedition. On the right side, you got them, says the old habits of running amok will run greatly on the football field. You know what I'm saying? Let me read it again because it's kind of small. His old habits of running amok will add greatly to the football field. So they show a black man running the football basically. And from the war dance, he gonna do the cakewalk. Now the cakewalk is if you know about the cakewalk is an old Negro dance. You know what I'm saying? That slaves used to do. You know what I'm saying? So basically, it's showing you in the Boston Sunday Globe, this picture, they are black people. We're going to go a little bit more into that. All right, this right here, the Black Roots of the Filipino. Moorish History by Filipino. Our ancestors in the Philippines, this is written by a Filipino. This is from 2016. This is from a pretty good AfricanSource.com, which is a pretty good magazine to get from. Our ancestors in the Philippines are ebony black, from the ancient Pygmy tribes of Ata, Ita, Domagat, Manawa, and Tagabunya, etc. We even share their facial features, even though most of the rest of us is mixed with Mayo-Polynesians, Chinese, and Spanish, so our skins is now brown. And so some of us have Asian and European features too. There's an old Philippine story we tell amongst ourselves about how 10 Dudas, chiefs from Borneo, arrived on the island of Paraguay in prehistory. They had run away from the expansion of the Muslim kingdoms over their Sharia kingdoms, in what is now our kin nations of Indonesia, Burma, and Malaysia. There were 10 duels that met with the paramount king of the original Black Atta people called Marmaduke, who traded some of his coastal land with the Pitadua, the prime minister of Raja, King Muran, for a conical hat, a sakalak, or they call it a conical hat, made of pure gold, silk, and other gifts. They honored the oath in a blood oath ritual, which he called the Sangadu. He agreed that the Attas would share the land with many thousands of Malaysian refugees called Vishnus, as the Sangadu was already done, and both groups of Vishnu and Atu were immediately to be considered as kin. So, of course, we intermix. The Atta, who returned to the hills, had a terrible harvest many years later, and famine ensued. They made their way down to the coast, and their Malaysian cousins, the Vishnu people, remembered the Sangadu with them and provided the black kin with food and provisions. The Atta and the Vishnu feasted as a result of the end of the famine. To this day, this feast still exists. It's called the Anta Ina, or to blacken, in which the Malaysian descendants of the 10 Dahu, or chief, in Pikini Island blacken their faces in gratitude and dance the same rhythm they dance to celebrate the Sangus of the blacks and Malaysians. When the Spanish came, they forced the natives to dedicate it to the child Jesus, or Santo Niños. But we Filipinos know the 10 Doodle story and know the real reasons why it's still performed. Our island became rich, so much so that other Asians called us Sabavia, or the land of gold. One group of Visions moved north and become the Tagalog people, who are the people of Manila, our city capital, and their language is government language now of our country. When the Spanish colonizers came in the 1500s, they changed this peaceful coexistence. This is how the Tagalog, the main ethnic group of Manila, upper classes, looked when the Spanish arrived in the 1500s. Note the black-skinned chief with the brown-skinned queen, the two native groups in the Philippines, all wore gold and silk. When the Spanish came, they forced the converts, the mixed coastal Malayan population, with the Tagalogs and the Vishnus to Catholicism. And the Atta, or the Eta, fed the forests and the islands interior to escape the Spanish. The Spanish then indoctrinated the coastal people against their own dark brown skin, and softly self-degenerating culture appeared. Along with a history in which they put into sugar and hemp plantations, the Spanish soldiers, priests, and haciendados raped the serf women and stole from villages, and many uprisings was killed with bloodshed. In the 19th century, we won our freedom from the Spanish, albeit for a short while, because the Americans then took over and immediately called us the niggers of Asia. In some ways, they were worse than the Spanish. This is how the papers depicted us in the U.S., as I showed this before, the Boston Globe picture, you know what I'm saying? Where they going to convert them over to playing baseball, football, doing, the duck walk, whatever, the cake walk, We are now an independent nation, but we have so many scars from our past as a result. So many of our women are caught up with whitening their skin nowadays to look at mosquito due to the post-colonization mentality. Shadeism exists in full force in our media, and the poor in our country do not finish their full education and have no idea that they too are descendants of black people. And they are quick to call how different the Atta are in their nappy hair, short stature, and darker skin tones. Despite this ignorance from among some, there will always be Filipinos who will pass down our ancient history down to the children, as to those who came before us. Hope this history light shares light on the black history of the Philippines from a Filipino person, which you will not find in Eurocentral books. So I want to show a picture of the Moros, as you see right here. The Moros is a combination, like I said, after a while. But, there's still some black, dark-skinned Moros around here. Sultans, they all Muslims. So they was already there before they converted to Islam. You see some dark black Moros. He's part of, this almost like the Bago Cabado, almost like the M word right here, almost like sound like Mandingo. And he looked damn near like a Mandingo. You know, but these are the people that the U.S. Army was exterminating. You know, the black people that look like this. You know, she part of that Moro tribe too. He's another one. You know, ain't nothing really much done changed over, but this how they is going. These photographs are taken by Dr. William R. Eastman Sr. in the Philippines between 1902 and 1906. Dr. Eastman was a captain in the U.S. Medical Corps. So that's how they looking. You know. But this is something they was killing all black people over there too. Like, you know, genocides we ain't never heard about. So it's a plethora of genocides that's not really discussed about in the book and the way they was doing our people. Anyway, this is Iskosi Umfundisi. Hey, subscribe to the channel. Arm yourself with knowledge, you know. Our history is a cultural, you know what I'm saying? Our history is one of the first things to get keeping that cultural identity. You know, don't think because of this we didn't fight back. We won out a couple of times too. You just gotta look into it in the history book and tell it. All right, y'all. Y'all have a good one. Peace.